The day of my surgery, I wasn't scared of pain. I wasn't even scared of the hospital or the doctors. What scared me most was the fear that no one would be there when I woke up. My parents promised they'd wait, said they'd be just outside in the waiting room. I saw them through the glass as they scrolled through their phones. Dad watching videos, Mom whispering to Elena about her gymnastics routine. She wore her team tracksuit, hair tied in a perfect ponytail, excitement buzzing around her like electricity. I asked the nurse if I could see my mom before they took me in. She came in, looking distracted, glancing at her phone. "You'll be fine," she said. "It's just a routine procedure. We'll be right here." Then she kissed my forehead and left. But when I woke up, they were gone. The nurse told me they had left right after I was wheeled in. "They said they had a prior commitment," she said gently. "Your sister's gymnastics competition." I stared at the ceiling in disbelief. The ache in my chest wasn't from the incision. It was from the realization that I was not their priority. Not even today. I reached for my phone, still groggy, and called my mom. No answer. I called Dad. Nothing. I tried Elena. Straight to voicemail. Hours passed. No one showed up. No messages. No calls. Only a quiet nurse who brought me food and sat by my side like she knew. She looked at me and said, "Sometimes family hurts worse than any wound," and I believed her. That night, alone in the hospital bed, I saw a video online. Mom cheering, Elena on the podium, golden medal in her hand. "So proud of our champion," the caption read. No mention of me. No sign that I'd ever been missing. They picked me up 2 days later like nothing happened. Dad opened the car door and said, "Ready?" Elena was in the back seat talking about her win, her medal, how the judges loved her. I stayed quiet. When I asked why they hadn't come, my mother simply said, "It wasn't that serious." I told her I was scared. She replied, "Don't be dramatic." At home they put up photos from the competition. A new frame with Elena mid-air sat next to the TV. No sign of the hospital. No sign of me. That night at dinner, no one asked me how I felt. Elena talked about how she nailed her landing, how one of the judges said she was the best they'd seen. Mom beamed. Dad nodded. I sat at the table like furniture, present but invisible. Days passed. No one brought up the surgery. No one acknowledged the silence. Then one morning, I found a box on my desk, wrapped in shiny paper with a note, "From Elena just because." I opened it slowly. Inside was her medal, in a velvet case, with a cheap engraved tag that read, "For being brave." I stared at it, frozen. She walked in moments later, smiling. "I figured you'd like it. I had it engraved. Told the guy it was for my sister." She looked so proud, so sure she was doing the right thing. I held the medal up. "You think this helps?" I asked. She blinked. "I just thought it might cheer you up. You've been acting weird." I laughed, but there was no joy in it. "You gave me your medal because you didn't have the decency to call me while I was lying in a hospital bed alone." She frowned. I didn't know what to say. "You could have just said sorry." I snapped. "You could have been there." She left in a huff, and I was left holding a shiny lie in a velvet box. That night, I dropped the medal in the trash bin outside the window. I didn't want it. I didn't want anything that reminded me. I was an afterthought in my own family. When my mother found out, she told me I was being ungrateful. "She was trying to do something nice for you," she said. "You're always so sensitive." I looked her in the eye and asked the question that had been burning in my throat for years. "Did you ever love me the way you love her?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The medal was supposed to mean something. That's what they always say, right? It's the thought that counts. But what if the thought itself is insulting? What if the thought is a convenient way to make yourself feel better while ignoring the truth? I stood at the window and watched the box hit the trash bin below. A soft thud. That was it. That's all it took to erase the illusion. I locked my window and sat on the floor, knees pulled to my chest, and cried until my stitches ached. Not because of the pain, but because I finally understood. My family didn't just forget me during surgery. They'd been forgetting me for years. I was the invisible one, the quiet one, the shadow in their perfect picture, and now I was done pretending that a shiny token could make that go away. The next few days I went silent. I skipped dinner. No one asked where I was. No one knocked. No one even sent a text. It was like I'd evaporated and they didn't notice. Elena posted more pictures. Mom shared another memory from the competition. Dad made a new highlight reel of her winning performance. And me. I lay in my room, watching the walls close in. One night, Uncle Rehan stopped by. He was dropping off something for Dad, but when he saw me, really saw me, he didn't smile. He didn't ask me to come downstairs. He just looked at me and said, "You okay, kid?" I don't know what made me speak. Maybe it was the way his voice didn't carry judgment. Maybe it was because he didn't pretend. I whispered, "No, I'm not." He stepped inside, shut the door gently, and sat at the edge of my bed. "If I could adopt you, I would," he said, "and I wouldn't make you earn it." I don't remember crying, but I remember not feeling alone for the first time in weeks. We didn't talk much. He just sat with me, brought me a sandwich and left a notebook on my desk. "Write it out," he said. "All of it, even the things you're scared to say out loud." That night, I opened to the first page and wrote, "If I disappeared tomorrow, would anyone notice?" I stared at the sentence for a long time, then closed the book and went to bed. Not because I was tired, but because there was nothing left to say, nothing left to prove. The next morning, I packed a bag, not for attention, not for drama, but because I needed to see if I could leave, and feel lighter. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I just walked out the front door at sunrise, breathing in the cold air like it was my first breath in years. The streets were empty. My heart was calm. I took the first bus out of town. I had nowhere grand to go, just one destination that made sense. Uncle Rehan. When I knocked, he opened the door like he'd been expecting me. "You're really here," he said. I nodded. "I'm really here." He didn't hug me, didn't press for answers, just handed me a glass of water and showed me to the guest room. "This is your space now," he said, and for the first time it felt like someone had made room for me, without asking me to shrink. That night, I slept for 10 straight hours. When I woke up, I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel broken. I just felt safe. The next morning, he handed me a plate of pancakes and said, "A friend of mine knows a therapist. Her name's Isha. She's different, but she listens." I nodded. I didn't argue. Something in me knew I needed it. Therapy wasn't magic, but Dr. Isha was steady. She didn't pry. She didn't fill the silence. She just waited until I was ready. And when I finally started talking, it came out like a flood. The hospital, the silence, the metal, the quiet erasure of my existence. She looked at me with kind eyes and said, "You don't have to earn love. You only have to stop accepting its substitutes." Each week, I grew stronger. I wrote more, talked more, smiled more, not because I was fixed, but because I was no longer carrying their weight on my back. Uncle Rehan never asked for updates. He just made tea, bought me second-hand books, left snacks outside my door, and one day, when I was folding laundry, my phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Where are you? We're worried." Then another, "Elena's been crying. Dad hasn't slept. Please call." I didn't reply, not because I wanted revenge, but because I had nothing left to give. They only missed me now that I was gone, but I was already learning to live without them. Days passed. The silence from them didn't ache anymore. It felt like fresh air. Every hour without a call or message became a quiet reminder that I had made the right choice. But just when I started to breathe without guilt, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a voicemail from Elena. Her voice cracked, like she had been crying. She said, "Mom's not sleeping. Dad's barely eating. We didn't mean to hurt you. The house feels wrong without you." I played it twice, then a third time, not because I missed them, but because I was searching for sincerity, for something real. It still felt like they missed my presence, not my pain, like they wanted the version of me that didn't challenge the silence. I didn't respond. Instead, I went for a walk. No phone, no music, just the sound of my own footsteps. For the first time, I noticed things. The way leaves rustled without asking for attention. The way the wind didn't need permission to move. That's what I wanted to be. Free, unseen by the eyes that only noticed me when I was gone. That evening, Uncle Rehan asked if I wanted to talk about it. I shook my head. "I don't feel angry," I said. "I just feel done." He nodded, and didn't press. He never did. That was his gift. He didn't try to fix me. He just stayed. And staying meant more than anything my parents had ever done. A week later, I received a package. It was from my mother, wrapped carefully, almost nervously. Inside were old photographs. Me as a child. Birthday parties I barely remembered. Pictures where I stood in the background, blurred, while Elena took center stage. Tucked between the prints was a handwritten note. "We're sorry we didn't notice you were hurting. We miss you. Please come home." There was no signature, but I knew the handwriting. I read it once, folded it, and placed it in the back of my notebook. Not to treasure it, but to remember how long it took for them to see me. They noticed my absence, but they had never chosen my presence. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just let the letter sit quietly in a drawer, next to the pieces of myself I had stopped offering to people who didn't value them. In therapy, Dr. Isha asked, "Do you think you'll ever go back?" I thought for a long time before answering. I don't want to return to a place where I was only seen after I left. She nodded slowly. That sounds like an answer to more than one question. She was right. I wasn't just leaving a home. I was leaving a pattern. But then one morning, they came. No warning, no call. Just a knock at Uncle Rehan's door. When he opened it, my parents stood there, awkward, unsure, with Elena clutching a small bag. I froze, not from fear, but from clarity. I wasn't scared of them anymore. I just didn't need them. Uncle Rehan turned to me. You okay? I nodded. Let them in. They walked inside like strangers who used to live here. Mom held a box of sweets. Dad offered a tight smile. Elena looked smaller than I remembered, like the weight of truth had finally found her shoulders. We're not here to fight, Mom said softly. We just want to see you. I nodded. You have. Dad looked around like he couldn't understand how I'd built a life without them. Elena finally whispered, I didn't mean to hurt you. I looked at her, my voice calm. But you did. They talked about guilt, about missing me, about how things got out of hand. But they didn't say the words I needed. They gave me explanations, not apologies, excuses wrapped in sentiment. When they finished, I said, I don't want justification. I wanted someone to stay, and none of you did. My mom's eyes welled with tears. We were wrong, she said. We should have stayed. We should have seen you. Dad finally spoke. We thought you were the strong one. I stared at him. Silence isn't strength, it's survival. Then finally, he said it. I'm sorry, just that. And for once, it felt real. Still, I didn't cry. I didn't collapse into their arms. I just stood there steady. I'm not coming back, I said. Not now, maybe not ever. I need space. And I don't owe you my healing. Mom opened her mouth to object, but stopped. That silence, that was her first honest answer. They left shortly after. No hugs, no promises, just quiet acceptance. And when the door closed, it didn't feel sad. It felt like closure. A few days later, Elena messaged me again. Do you still hate me? I didn't, but I didn't trust her either. Still, I agreed to meet. She came alone. No makeup, no medals, no spotlight. Just a sister, stripped of performance. We sat across from each other, hands wrapped around cold tea. I thought you liked being invisible, she said. You never fought for attention. I looked at her, tired, but honest. I wasn't quiet because I wanted to be. I was quiet because no one listened. She nodded, eyes wet. I'm sorry. Not with fanfare, not for forgiveness, just because she meant it. And I believed her. I forgive you, I said, but I'm still choosing me. Her voice broke. So what now? I stood up, steadier than I had ever been. Now I stopped begging to be chosen, and I choose myself. She didn't argue. She just nodded and walked away. 3 years have passed since I walked away. No dramatic goodbyes, no screaming matches, just a quiet decision to stop chasing love in places that only offered me silence. I live in a small apartment now, the kind with creaky floors, chipped paint, and too much sunlight, and I love it, because every inch of this space belongs to me. My books, my words, my breath. There's no one waiting for me to shrink, no one hovering with disappointment when I speak too much, or not at all, just me. Finally learning how to take up space without guilt. I write now, not just in notebooks, but for the world. What started as late-night journaling turned into essays. Those essays became stories. And one day, someone reached out and said, you have a voice that makes people feel seen. I didn't know how to accept that at first. I had spent so long being invisible, I didn't recognize what it felt like to be witnessed. But I wrote anyway. I wrote the book I had once needed to read. I called it I Almost Died Alone. And when it was published, I didn't think anyone would care. But people did. Thousands of them. They sent messages, left comments, poured out their own stories. Pain has a way of finding itself in others, and in that I found healing. The dedication page was simple. To those who abandoned me, it made me stronger. My mother called after it was released. Left a voicemail I never returned. I read your book, she said. I know it's about us. I'm sorry. I hope one day you'll let us try again. I didn't delete it, but I didn't respond either, because some wounds don't need to be reopened, even if the scar looks clean. A few weeks later, Elena sent a letter. She said she was in therapy now, said she was trying to unlearn the need to be adored. She wrote, I used to think I was the light, but maybe I was just standing in a spotlight someone else paid for. I smiled when I read that. She's growing, in her own way, and I wish her well. From afar, on the anniversary of my surgery, I lit a single candle, not to mourn, but to honor the girl I used to be. the one who waited in that hospital bed for someone who never came. I sat in silence and thanked her, because she broke, and because she broke, and because she broke, I could rebuild. Every version of me that came after, stronger, louder, freer, owed her everything. People ask me if I ever forgave my family, and the truth is, I stopped needing to. I let them go. That was enough. Now I live quietly. I walk through the world without shrinking. I make tea in the mornings, and leave my windows open. I take deep breaths without wondering if I'm taking up too much space. My bookshelf holds a single framed page. You chose her. Now I choose me. It's not bitterness. It's not revenge. It's just the truth. They had their chance to show up, and I had the courage to walk away when they didn't. Some days, I think about visiting, just standing in front of the house, where I used to beg for affection, whispering, I survived you, but I never go, because I don't need to be seen by people who once chose to look away. I see myself now, and that's enough. I got a small tattoo on my wrist last year. One word, survivor. Not because I survived surgery, but because I survived being forgotten, and I didn't just live. I became the kind of person who doesn't wait to be chosen. I became the kind of woman who chooses herself every single day. I lived, and I left them behind. Some days healing feels like freedom, like stepping out into the sun, after living too long in someone else's shadow. Other days healing feels like guilt, like I escaped a burning house and left behind people who were still asleep inside. I don't miss my family. Not really. But I do sometimes miss the idea of them. The version I created in my mind, the one where they loved me softly, remembered to ask if I'd eaten, and stayed beside me after surgery, instead of cheering from a crowd for someone else. That kind of love never came. But the guilt, it did. It still shows up when the days are too quiet, or when my phone buzzes, and I hope it's no one I recognize. In therapy I told Dr. Isha, I feel bad for feeling good. She didn't ask me to explain right away. She just nodded, letting the words hang in the air like fog. When I finally added, I feel selfish, she leaned forward gently and asked, whose story are you still trying to carry? And I didn't need to answer, because we both knew it wasn't mine. It was theirs, their version of who I was supposed to be, their version of how family should look from the outside. I had walked away, but I was still carrying the echo. That night I dreamt I was back in the hospital. Except this time, I didn't wake up. I just floated unseen while they left, without ever looking back. When I finally opened my eyes in real life, I was gasping like I had just clawed my way out of that white hallway all over again. I sat by the window, still trembling, and wrote in my notebook. I don't miss them. I miss the version of them I wished they were. The truth is, sometimes what we grieve isn't the loss of people, it's the loss of possibility. 2 days later, I ran into Lara, a girl from high school, at a cafe. She smiled too brightly, sat down without asking, and said she'd read my book. Then she made a comment that stayed with me. Your mom always seemed so loving at school events. I blinked at her, stunned by how effortless the lie had been. That's the thing about neglect. It doesn't bruise the skin, it just hollows you out, quietly. I stood up and left my coffee behind. I couldn't breathe in that space anymore. I couldn't stomach another person telling me how nice my mother seemed. When I got home, I opened a drawer full of old letters I never sent. Letters to my mother. Letters to my father. Dozens to Elena. Some were angry. Others were quiet. All of them were written by a version of me who still thought writing might make them understand. I reread one that said, you didn't need to fix it. You just needed to notice. Then I wrote a new one, for myself. I don't need them to understand anymore. I just need to stop apologizing for leaving. The next morning, I got a message from Elena. It read, I know I hurt you more than I'll ever understand, but I want to try. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here. No expectations. I didn't know how to feel. I just knew I wasn't angry anymore. So I wrote her back, not to rekindle anything, but to say what I needed. My letter said, I used to write unsent letters to you. I don't hate you. I never did. I just needed you to see me, and you didn't. But I forgive you now. Not because it fixes anything, but because I'm ready to carry less. I mailed it the next morning. For the first time, I didn't wonder how it would be received. I just released it. 2 weeks later, I received a letter in return. It was messy, raw, full of crossed out lines. She wrote, I was always chasing medals while you were bleeding. And I never stopped to ask why you were so quiet. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't promise anything. She just ended with, I want to become something new, with you if you'll let me. And that was enough for now. Around the same time, I started teaching a writing class at the local library. That's where I met Mira, a teenage girl who stayed behind after class and said, your book helped me. Her eyes were the same kind of tired I used to see in the mirror. She whispered, sometimes I feel like if I vanished, no one would notice. It hit me like a memory. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who had survived. I was the woman helping someone else survive. I told her, I don't think it gets better. I think we get braver. She nodded, and I realized something else. Healing isn't always about being whole. Sometimes it's about holding space for others, while they find their own way home. That night, I sat by the window and wrote another letter. Not to anyone else. Just to the girl I used to be. You survived, I wrote. Not because they finally saw you, but because you stopped waiting to be seen. And I wept. Not because I was sad, but because I finally believed it. Mira gave me a short story later that week. It was about a girl who lived in a house full of voices, but none that spoke to her. At the end, the girl sets her bedroom on fire, and walks away barefoot, carrying only a pen. Mira looked nervous when she handed it to me and said, I hope it's not too dark. I told her, it's not dark. It's true, and I realized, I had become the home I never had. Not for them, for me, and for girls like her. Months passed, seasons shifted. I moved into a cottage on the edge of the city. It's small, quiet, full of plants and books. Every morning, I write beside the window where the light pours in like forgiveness. I've stopped waiting for apologies. I've stopped trying to explain myself to people who weren't listening. I've stopped needing anyone to say they're proud of me. Because I am. For surviving. For choosing myself. For staying. One morning, I got a message from my mother. Simple, we're thinking of you. The door is always open. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I'd already walked through another door. One I built myself. And that door leads to a life where I don't have to shrink to be loved. Elena and I write sometimes. Not often. Just enough. She tells me she's studying psychology, that she wants to understand how we all got so broken. She said, I used to think I was the sun. But maybe I was just standing under someone else's spotlight. I told her I was proud. We don't pretend to be close. We just keep trying. And that's enough. Last fall, I visited the neighborhood. I don't know why. Maybe to see if I still felt like a ghost. I walked past the old house. The porch. The front door I once stared at from a hospital bed, hoping someone would come home early and ask if I was okay. It looked smaller now, like it could no longer contain the weight of what I lived through. I didn't stop. I didn't cry. I just kept walking, and whispered to myself, I survived you. That night, I sat on my porch in my new home, the sky turning gold and lavender. I drank tea and let the wind carry the silence. I thought about all the girls like me. Girls who learned how to vanish in plain sight. And I made myself a promise. I will never let another girl feel unseen in a room I walk into, ever again. I opened my journal and wrote, this is my home now. Not a building, not a family, a life where I am not an afterthought. A life where I am not waiting to be chosen. Then I closed the book, leaned back, and listened to the wind, and for the first time in years, I wasn't healing from anything. I was just living,